So we're going to begin. We're holding on Perek Kav Zayin, chapter 27 of the Tanya. A beautiful chapter, very important chapter, and I call it a revolutionary chapter because it introduces some very interesting ideas that one would never even think about. The entire book, the Sefer Tanya, is a very important book. Every chapter builds on the previous one and focuses on the service of Hashem and how to form a strong connection, how not to be sad, how not to be depressed, how to realize that we have great potential, and that potential is within us, and therefore our connection to Hashem is accessible, it's within reach. And the book is really focused on Benonim, average people, if we may call that word Benoni, average. It means that one may not necessarily have the greatest soul, the soul of the tzaddikim. That's okay, because as we will see in this chapter, even though he may not possess the greatest of souls, he is special and he's unique in some way. The mere fact that he's endowed with a soul, with a divine soul, that is already something significant. It gives him certain abilities that as long as they don't remain dormant, they are capable of leading him on the right path, and he can achieve tremendous high levels of spirituality or connection with Hashem. After all, we know that life is not just about survival, physically, eating, drinking, working. We all have a mission that we need to accomplish, and that this world that is so concealed, it is sometimes difficult to realize what that mission is. But nevertheless, we do have free will. It's important to remember at all times, no matter how our inclinations are, however they may be, even though they're not necessarily so positive. A lot of people don't necessarily have positive inclinations or tendencies. Still, regardless, we all have, as a result of that divine soul, the free will, the ability to conquer the evil inclination, the Yetzer Hara, and to lead righteous lives, to lead good lives. And that is part of the mission of the Jew and the non-Jew alike, except that the Jew has a different approach, a different method of acquiring that high level that he's expected to acquire, in the fact that he is an emissary or ambassador to the nations to basically spread the light, spread the word, be an example for others to follow. Through his understanding, through his observance of the Torah mitzvot, he adds so much light to creation. And through that light, the darkness hopefully will disappear. And people will become more aware. That's the key word here, awareness. Not too many people have this awareness of who the human being is, who God is, and so forth. So it is the job of the Jew to make that bridge, to make that connection, not only for himself, but for the entire world, by propagating, by disseminating the words of the Torah. So in the previous chapters, we spoke about several of the impediments, obstacles, that give the Jew a difficult time, or even the non-Jew, that make it more difficult for him to serve God. And one of those is sadness. Sadness makes it difficult for one to overpower his Yetzer Hara. In the previous chapter, he explained how to overcome that sadness, and that sadness was specifically a sadness that comes about for materialistic reasons. People are unhappy, or as a result of sins that he may have committed. So that particular sadness has its own way of being resolved, on how one can deal with it. That is a different kind of sadness. In this chapter and in the following chapter, he'll be talking more about sadness that comes about as a result of certain thoughts that one may have, and certain desires. We're talking about negative thoughts, negative desires. Whether it happens to him during the time he's at work, whether it happens to him at the time when he's learning, he feels very down as a result of these kinds of thoughts or desires that he may have. So one of the first things that he says, which is surprising, is that if anyone does have these kinds of thoughts, he should be happy. And as soon as you read those words, happy, it strikes you as something very, very unusual. Why should someone be happy from being sad? People don't realize where the sadness comes from and ultimately what it's for. As we've explained in the past, obstacles in life in general are good. Because of the obstacles, we become stronger. Sometimes a teacher may have a difficult student. Sometimes a parent may have a difficult child. Instead of giving up, instead of complaining, one should realize that that presents a challenge. And if they deal with it properly over time, not only will they become more experienced, it will perhaps make them a stronger individual. So the challenge in itself appears to be something bad, something difficult. But challenges are there for a reason. And as he explains with atzavut, sadness, this type of sadness that he'll be talking about is actually something that he should be happy about. Why should he be happy about? In the end, what is expected of him? What is expected of this individual who's sad? It is expected of him le'aseh da'ato mimeno. He has to learn to ignore it. He has to learn to control himself. So the fact that he's being challenged is good. He's going to learn, right, how to control himself. He's going to hopefully overcome this sadness. And that is why this is something that he should be happy about. Now, what will this do for him if he overcomes it? If he pushes it away, what will this do to him? Now remember, we're talking about sadness now that comes from bad thoughts. All right? He has hirhurim ra'im, thoughts of sin and the like, bad thoughts. So what if he conquers them? So what if he pushes them aside? What does he gain from it? The first thing he gains is that he fulfills the commandment, you should not pursue, follow your thoughts, that which you desire. So the thoughts and the desires come against our wishes sometimes, and here we have not the opportunity to push it aside. Does the tzaddik have this? No. The tzaddik doesn't have that kind of an obstacle, does not necessarily have this challenge. So this benoni, this average individual, in some ways, as he will point out, will have an advantage over the tzaddik. Not exactly an advantage where he's better, but he will have a type of challenge through which he can become closer to Hashem if he does the job properly. The tzaddik has a different kind of a job. So this is something to be happy about. During the moment that he will push away, cast away that thought, he will be fulfilling the mitzvah of V'lo tatur acharei vavchem. Because this pasuk was not really intended for tzaddikim, the righteous, because they have already conquered the Yetzer Hara. They don't have evil thoughts, at least not most of the times. So to whom is the Torah speaking to? To the average individual who has to do battle on a regular basis. Regular basis, just about every day, with all kinds of thoughts, all kinds of challenges. We're not talking about a rasha either here, because what is a rasha? A wicked person wants these things. So he thinks about them, meditates on them, plans his day based on them. So we're not talking about the rasha, but neither are we talking about the tzaddik, who doesn't have these kind of thoughts. So we're talking about the benoni, the average individual. What happens is that benonim, average individuals, sometimes have all kinds of unusual thoughts, negative thoughts. And they could be, as he says in the book, beheterolo. In other words, they could come innocently. Not that they were thinking about it intentionally, looking for it for a moment. It can come innocently, out of nowhere. But at the moment that he distracts himself from it, he stops thinking about it, he fulfills this lav meaning this negative commandment, in a positive way, that he holds himself back, obviously, from further thinking about it. And the rabbis tell us the same. The rabbis tell us a very interesting Gemara. Yashav velo avar avera. Let's say somebody was tempted. He was just minding his own business. He was working. And all of a sudden, there was this opportunity for him to do a wrong, whatever it may be, to steal, to do something that's not right, not proper. But he held himself back. He fulfilled a mitzvah at that moment. A mitzvah, a good deed, is not just doing something proactively. We see from this Gemara that even if you hold yourself back from doing a wrong, you were tempted, you were challenged, and you said, no, I'm not going to do it, that refusal is also a mitzvah. It's a good deed. So therefore, one has to be happy, he says, when he's able to resist and able to distract himself from these kind of thoughts. In the same way, he should be happy if he observed a real mitzvah. So why be sad? So you see, this type of sadness in the end is good for him. Because if he's able to pull out and to resist whatever it is that he's being tempted to do or to think about, he's actually fulfilling a mitzvah. Now he says as follows. There's, however, something deeper in him, in his nature, in his character, that is leading him to this sadness. And it's wrong. And he says it originates from arrogance. Atzvut, sadness, should come from arrogance. Yes, because deep down, he says, you know where this originates from, this type of sadness? That he thinks of himself, or that he aspires to be a tzaddik. And here he sees that he's so far from being the perfect man, or the perfect woman. And he feels bad about it. Because he would want to. Now, it's a little interesting that he says that this comes from arrogance, because everyone should aspire to be a tzaddik. So we're not really talking about tzaddik the way we understand tzaddik, as just a righteous individual doing the right thing. For that you have to have learned the Tanya from the very beginning. We're talking about a benoni. A benoni can be a righteous individual, but has continuous challenges and he controls himself. Tzaddik, in this book at least, is the level of an individual who has completely conquered his Yetzer Hara, no longer has any challenges. Almost perfect. I say almost, nobody's perfect, right? Almost perfect. Doesn't do battle, at least not on a regular basis with the Yetzer Hara. So he says deep down this sadness could be coming from, apparently, from the fact that he would want to be a tzaddik or think of himself like a tzaddik, and here he's not, because he's having all these thoughts, wrong thoughts, that are penetrating, invading his mind. And that's no good. He says, because if anything, what he should strive for is to be a benoni, is to be an average good person that does everything right, despite the fact that he has all these challenges and temptations. Sometimes when a person strives for something which is out of reach, which is not really so realistic, he can become very, very sad and broken and give up. So you have to be realistic. You're not there. And if you think you're almost there, it's arrogance. So that sadness could be coming from an arrogance that he would want to think of himself like a tzaddik, and he sees that he's not there. And that's just not a healthy way of thinking. He should strive to be a benoni, to be a good person, to do things right, even though he's being challenged every single day by the Yetzer Hara. And that's something very, very difficult to understand, why the challenges should be on a daily basis. Why can it just be once in a while? Why can it be that the average individual can get rid of this temptation forever? So here in this chapter, he's going to introduce a beautiful, beautiful idea that many people are unaware of. I believe that it's very important to learn this chapter just for this idea alone. How there is a certain job that many people have. And this job involves dealing with the Yetzer Hara on a regular basis. It's a job. Even though all of humanity has Yetzer Hara, has an evil inclination, we all do, we're all born with it. But it's different than saying that one has a challenge. Challenge means a difficult time on almost a regular basis. Why? It's not fair. It appears to be not fair. Others don't and others do. Yes, we will see why in a moment. But that's where he's headed. we want to reassure this individual who has a difficult time, who's not a tzaddik yet, that it's okay. As long as he does a good job and he succeeds in controlling his Yetzer Hara, he's doing something very, very important. There's no reason for him to be sad. Now, it's true, a tzaddik, on the level of a true tzaddik, there would be no such hirhurim, as he calls it, hirhurei shtut, such folly, such ridiculous ideas, such negative ideas. It's true. Yeah. And apparently this individual feels that he's very, very far from being a tzaddik. So the mistake he makes is he's aspiring for the wrong thing. Aspiring to be who you can be. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't want to be a tzaddik. That's where it's a little bit, perhaps, not clear. He's not saying don't aspire to be a tzaddik, but first aspire to be who you can, based on your capabilities, realistically. To be on the level of a tzaddik, one needs to be endowed with a special neshama. And that's something which is very, very unclear to most people, because what do you mean different special neshama? There's different kinds of souls. Yes, to better understand the subject, one needs to learn the Tanya from the very beginning. And even the Tanya alone is not enough to understand what it means to have different levels of the neshama. The Kabbalah gets into that. But just like we have different professions in life, carpenter, plumber, electrician, right? There's different professions. So there are different missions in this world. And depending on what the mission of the individual is, he is given the toolbox, if we can call it that, to accomplish that mission. Part of that toolbox is a special neshama. You have to be equipped, with certain, interests, with a certain amount of divinity, holiness, whatever you want to call it, that can help accomplish it. Just think about the Jewish people. It's a little easier to understand it in relationship to the Jewish people. We were given 613 commandments. If we would observe all of them properly, we would accomplish our mission. We need those 613. It's not just about reward in the afterlife. It's not only about doing Hashem's will, which is, of course, part of our observance of the Mitzvot, but there's something about observing those commandments in this world, for the entire world to see. It does something to this world. We're actually affecting this world in a positive way. We're bringing more and more light. We don't see it, but that's what light and holiness means. It's something spiritual. It drives away darkness. It drives away the impure forces. And this is just a fact. There is something called impure forces who oppose divinity, who oppose Hashem. And how are we going to do battle with it? How are we going to do battle with Amalek, which is another type of soul, the exact opposite of the Jewish people, opposed to anything the Torah says, opposed to that light. But most people don't understand this, that there's a real battle going on here between two forces. And a little bit of that is insinuated in the battle between Yaakov and Esav, two little brothers, twins, right? Born to Yitzchak and Rivka. This is not just a little story being told to us in the Torah. It's about a big battle that will be fought in generations to come between opposing forces. And here you have, on a mini scale, opposing forces in every human being. The Yetzer Hara and the Yetzer Hara. All in order to enable free will. We have to have free will. We're not robots. So in order to enable free will, you have to have someone pulling like this and someone pulling like that. We have all kinds of thoughts, sometimes contradictory thoughts. And who's going to make a seder? Who's going to resolve it for us? The Torah. The Torah will tell you, follow this path. Don't look right, don't look left. Just go straight on this path and you'll be fine. Be careful. So an individual who's doing battle with this Yetzer Hara and wins, even though sometimes he may lose, but at least he wins some of the time, he's doing something very special, something very good, something quite normal, something which is expected of him. There's no reason to be sad about it. So this kind of sadness in the end, even if it's there momentarily, in the end, hopefully, he will be able to drive it away. How? By having the thought of how good this is, how special it is, that he was tempted, challenged, but he was able to overcome it. And even though it appears something not too good to have these kinds of thoughts. It's disgusting, right? You may think of it that way. No, it says, that could be your job. You're going to get those things. You're going to have to deal with them from time to time, but you're going to do it. You're going to win. And when you do win, you have no idea how great your accomplishment is. That's what he's going to talk about next. He says, this is the avodah of the Benoni. This is ultimately the job of the Benoni, the average individual. Lichbosh ta yetzer, to conquer the yetzer, to deal with those hirurim, those thoughts that he has. La'asiach da'ato, to distract himself from them. Litchot otam, to push them aside. That's his job. That's the job of the Benoni. As he explained in chapter 12, the Benoni, the average individual, has no control. En lo shlita, has no control on what comes to his mind and heart. Things come. We live in this world, we're exposed to all kinds of things. Now, it doesn't mean that we should intentionally expose ourselves to that which we know in advance is dangerous to our eyes. That's the dangers of the internet, the dangers of newspapers and all the sources that may contain a lot of impurity. They don't care. They're not sensitive about these things, and they just want to sell. And this sells. For them, garbage sells. But for us, it's dangerous. It's poison. Those who want to be holy have to stay away from it. We have no choice. It's going to ruin our life, chas v'shalom. So he told us already in chapter 12, en shlita, we don't have complete control. Right? We can't just be hermits and stay away from all that. We have to be careful. So we have no control of what enters our life. There's all kinds of challenges that we have to deal with. Even things that have nothing to do with bad thoughts, challenges. And you have to be on the defensive. How do you deal with a tough neighbor? How do you deal with people who you always see them and they insult you? And they nag and they complain to you, and what are you going to do? Are you going to be abusive to them? Are you going to run away from them? You can't run away from them. So we have to learn how to deal with difficult people. It's a big challenge. And sometimes these difficult people can be relatives. Relatives, a mother-in-law, a father-in-law, a brother-in-law, a sister-in-law, even one's own brother sometimes. What do you do? How do you deal with them properly? It's a challenge. So as he told us in chapter 12, we have no control over what enters most of the time. Sometimes we do have control. We don't, intentionally look for it. But he's talking about in general terms, things enter into our life, into our mind, without our control. Therefore, he says, that we can't stop. Kol tafkido shel habenoni, his entire job is to do what? It's not necessarily to block it from coming. It's to not allow them to be expressed through his levushim, through his machshava, dibur, and maaseh. Should not absorb them, take them in, and allow them to be expressed through him, through his various ways of expression, modes of expression, thought, speech, and action. And that's all. And I've talked about this in a very important lecture called Forbidden Fruits, for those who are struggling with homosexuality and other vices, similar vices, challenges. And they must remember that it's not such a problem having the thought, having the desire, having the inclination. The main idea is not to carry out, not to act upon them. That's all. The Torah says don't act upon them. That's all. Even though there is a verse called Lo taturu, to not intentionally look for these things, to not intentionally think or want or pursue these things. That's something else. But what if somebody naturally is inclined to certain things? Right? And I have a whole lecture about why this happens. No doubt about it that it's a challenge. But we're talking about normal people. How to deal with it properly. So the main thing to remember is not to act upon it. Just because it happens doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. Just don't act upon it. How am I going to not act upon it? Well, listen to that lecture. Yeah? Advice on how to deal with challenges in that particular challenge is in that lecture. So we have all kinds of challenges. How do we successfully deal with them? So last week was a special topic of dealing with irreconcilable differences. It's also a challenge. How do you deal with tough people? How do you deal with people who are different, think different, want to think different things? And especially if you live with them on a regular basis. You can't avoid it. It's not easy. So in that chapter he told us how to just not let it be expressed through us, for us not to be agents of sin. Don't allow it to be expressed through machshava, dibur, maaseh, through your thoughts. Don't dwell on it, in other words, don't talk about it, and don't act upon them. So where do we have free will? Where do we have a koach? Where do we have the ability to do anything about them? In either accepting or refusing them, that's all. We have no control whether they come into our life, whether they invade our thoughts. Not always. Where do we have any say? Whether we act upon them or not. Do we accept them? Do we adapt them? Or do we refuse them? That's where the free will comes in. Now comes the main point. Once we do refuse, we said no. You know what happens? We have just defeated the sitra achara. We have just defeated the impure forces. Momentarily, perhaps, for now. But this defeat, saying no, remember the story with Yosef? He walked out on her. He actually didn't walk out, he ran out. He ran away. That is a tremendous kiddush Hashem, sanctification of Hashem's name. But we don't see it. What did he exactly do? When we refuse a wrong, something happens in the upper worlds that we don't see. But it's something very powerful. Because the moment that we, down here below, defeat the sitra achara, we did not only defeat it down here, we caused a weakening of the sitra achara even in the upper worlds. And when that happens, automatically the kavod of Hashem, the honor of Hashem is increased, much more than any other praise he says. So this is something that Hashem loves. This is something that Hashem wants. I want you to defeat my enemy. What's interesting about it, this is an enemy Hashem created, by the way, right? But Hashem says, I want you to defeat him. And when you do, you have no idea what pleasure it brings me. So when an individual who has a challenge refuses the temptation to do something which is wrong, whether it's in a thought or in an actual deed, he is defeating at that moment the Yetzer Hara, and that defeat, that momentarily defeat, is a big accomplishment. The Zohar, he says, elaborates a lot more about the Nahat Ruach, the tremendous pleasure that this gives to Hashem. When the Sitra Achara, itkafya means it's subdued. It's subdued here, and it's subdued in its greatest heights. As he says, he quotes the Pasuk of the Navi, even if you rise to the greatest heights, like an eagle, I will make you tumble down from there. Then he's talking about Edom, the Roman Empire, which eventually will fall down. Even if you rise to the greatest heights, and you're a big shot, from the greatest height, you will come tumbling down. So he says that pasuk in some way relates to the Sitra Achara, even though it's in a great height in the upper world. Down here, from this world, Olam Asiyah, the lowest of the worlds, we can accomplish something great. We can weaken it here, and as a result, also weaken it upstairs. Just an important point to add over here. He doesn't say it, but it's understood. That even though we're saying to the Benoni, distract yourself from all those bad thoughts, push them aside, don't focus on them, it doesn't mean, chas v'shalom, to be indifferent, liot adish, that don't think about them at all. It should bother you, obviously. It is a problem. If a person is having wrong thoughts, whatever they may be about anything that is wrong, in some ways it should bother him, because maybe he's just watching too much TV. Maybe he's just thinking about things all the time, too much. He's obsessed with it. So it should bother him. He should not be indifferent to it. If it's coming to him on a regular basis, there's something wrong. But he's not saying that right now. He's just saying the job of the Benoni, of the average individual, is just to cast them aside, remove them. Don't be sad. Don't feel bad that you have them, because if anything, you should be happy. You're given here an opportunity, you're given here a challenge, that if you defeat, if you overcome the Yetzer Hara, the Sitra Achara, you have no idea of what you've accomplished. Maybe I should mention the story. There's an incredible story that happened somewhere in the early 80s. I was in Israel at that time, I think it was either 1980, 81. As you know, in those days, there were a lot of bus bombings. Bombs hidden under the bench, under the seat of the buses. And on one bus, there was an individual that went up and got on the bus. And as soon as he goes up to the bus, he sees some ladies that were not dressed very modestly. So he turns his eyes away. He's, after all, a righteous individual. He doesn't want to look at them. And he goes towards the back seat, not to be sitting, around these people. And there's another immodestly dressed woman. And again, he closes his eyes not to look at her and sits down towards the back. And he falls asleep. In his sleep, he has a dream that somebody's telling him, get up right away, under your seat there is a bomb. So he thought it's just a dream, a bomb underneath my seat. He goes back to sleep, and he has the dream again. Get up quickly, there's a bomb under your seat, go tell the driver about it. So this time if he goes, okay, let me see. And sure enough, he sees a bag with wires that are sticking out. So, as everybody knows, in Israel, you go right away to the nahag, to the driver, and you tell everybody to get off the bus. So the driver opens up all the doors, everybody gets off the bus, and they call the chablan, as he's called, the one that comes to, forget the word in English, the bomb squad. The bomb squad to basically to disassemble this bomb, this explosive. But sure enough, that's what it was. So far so good. He saved an entire bus. He forgot about it. Sometime later, I don't know if it was a couple weeks later, he went to see the Baba Sali, the big tzaddik, the Baba Sali Netivot. He went either to get a blessing or whatever. He went to see him. And as soon as he comes to the Baba Sali says, you know why you had two dreams? He tells him on his own. You know why you had two dreams with an angel that came to you to reveal to you, of all people, that there was a bomb underneath your seat? Because on two occasions you closed your eyes. On two occasions you looked away from those immodestly dressed women. So because of the two times that you looked away, you had two dreams that you merited having to save the entire bus, through the zechut that you had to look away from that which was wrong. Tremendous story. There's many stories like that. People who have a zechut, some merit as a result of looking away, controlling themselves. It's not easy. And he knew the importance of doing that. And he was able to save the whole bus. Why is it so important? We just said, because through a refusal, a simple refusal, Hashem's kavod, Hashem's glory and honor is increased in all the worlds. And that's important. That's a big accomplishment if that's the case. Then he says like this, well, even though it's challenge, even though it may be difficult, it could just very well be that this is his mission throughout his life. He came into this world to fight his entire life against the Yetzer Hara. Don't be sad. This is your mission. You may never be like the tzaddik. In this case, what we mean by tzaddik is the level of the tzaddik. That doesn't mean you will not be a righteous person. But on the level of the tzaddik where you've conquered the Yetzer completely and you have no temptations. But throughout your 70, 80 years of existence in this world, it may just be that you will continuously, regularly be challenged and be tempted by the Yetzer Hara. It could be that you came into this world for that reason alone. To do what? To subdue the Sitra Achara. That's your job. So he mentions the pasuk in Iyov, Barata Reshaim. Iyov says, Hashem, you created wicked people, evil people. it does not mean that pasuk is not saying that Hashem actually wants to have evil people. After all, we have free will. Even the Rasha, the wicked man, has a free will. So what does it mean, Barata Reshaim? So he explains what that verse means is that Hashem made it possible that in this world there will be people who will continuously think of doing that which is wrong, continuously have wicked thoughts, in this exact same way that the Reshaim, real Reshaim, that's all they think about, is that which is wrong. There will be people which Hashem allowed to come into this world, who for the most part, that's all that they will be dealing with, is bad thoughts, which they will need to conquer. That's their job, that's their mission. And that's very interesting, because we always think that a Rasha, we're not talking about the most evil person here. We're talking about Rashaim that are always thinking of doing something wrong. They may not be the worst type of people in the world, but they're just more inclined to do that which is against the will of Hashem. They're more into themselves. They're not so into doing that which is divine. So it's interesting. I mean, that there should be people like that. Why does Hashem create such individuals? Who needs them? Hashem says, I need these people too. Barata Reshaim. Yes, because this gives me tremendous nachat ruach, because if these kinds of individuals who are thinking of that which is wrong, or who are continuously tempted, if they go ahead and refuse, you know what that does to my world? Wow, that destroys the evil inclination, that weakens the sitra hara. That's something that tzaddik can't do. The tzaddik doesn't do that because the tzaddik doesn't have this war, this challenge. The tzaddik has overcome all his temptations. So what is the tzaddik doing? The tzaddik is only disseminating more light and more kedusha in the world, he says. That's the tzaddik. His job is to disseminate that light, to increase holiness in the world. But apparently Hashem needs certain individuals, not that he wants them to do the wrong things or to think the wrong things, but they have that inclination. They have those desires. Why? It's good that they have them. Because they have them, they will be challenged to overcome them, to refuse them. And if they do, that is a tremendous accomplishment. You know what a Baal Tshuva is? One who has done Teshuvah. He's bigger than a tzaddik in some ways. The tzaddik didn't have those temptations. The tzaddik perhaps was raised from when he was a little baby in the house of tzaddikim. He wasn't exposed. He didn't have all these challenges. For someone who grew up in a secular home, secular lifestyle, to leave that behind and to embrace Torah and spirituality is admirable. They're on a higher level in the upper world than the tzaddikim. We're talking about regular tzaddikim. We're not talking about the biggest tzaddikim of all. The rabbis talk about that too. So look what a Baal Teshuvah can accomplish. Something that a tzaddik cannot accomplish, because he's just doing always the right thing. He didn't have to conquer and fight the Yetzer Hara. So even though they are fighting with the Yetzer Hara, with the Sitra Hara, it doesn't mean that they will always completely eliminate that Yetzer Hara or that Sitra Hara from within themselves. They will have that continuous struggle, but at least they will have the upper hand. That's what Abinoni means, really. He has the upper hand. He does not succumb, at least not all the time. He's winning. In order to win, you have to have a battle. So he will continuously, possibly have a battle, but hopefully he will win. So he continues on to say like this. The reason why Hashem has this type of creation, or this type of challenge for certain people, the reason Hashem allows this type of thing to exist is because there's two kinds of nachat ruach that Hashem has, two types of pleasures that Hashem derives from in this world. We're talking about spiritual pleasures, nachat ruach to Hashem. One can be compared to taking that which is bitter and making it sweet, taking that which is dark and transforming it into light. That's one kind of nachat ruach. That's what the tzaddik does. Takes something which is bitter and sweetens it, elevates it, drives away the darkness through his light. That's what a tzaddik does in this world. Then you can have someone who takes that which is spicy, hot, and sour. Completely different kind of ingredients that by themselves are not so pleasant. But if they are mixed in the right way, the right quantities, and prepared right, you can make a very delicious dish from it that is pleasant to the palate. Says that's the Benoni. The Benoni is dealing with that which is, I was going to say sweet and sour, but not sweet and sour. That which is spicy, hot and sour. That by themselves, these ingredients are no good. They're not pleasant. Something which is very, very spicy, something which is very sour. But if you just know how to combine them, how to mix them, to use them the right amounts, you can transform this into a dish that is very pleasant. Shemeshivta nefesh. That is very enjoyable. That does something good for the individual. So you see how you have two different types of individuals. One who's in charge of driving away darkness by increasing light, increasing holiness, taking that which is bitter and making it sweet. Completely different kind of job. The one who's unfortunately dealing with tough ingredients, hot and spicy and sour, and he's asked, prepare me a dish, from this type of ingredients. He's dealing with the sitra hara, he's dealing with the evil inclination only, in a sense. And here he's being asked, do something that can bring pleasure, nachadrot Hashem. How? With all these bad thoughts, with all this, difficult ingredients? Yeah, even with this difficult ingredients, with the bad thoughts, with the temptations, all you gotta do is refuse. Refuse, conquer. And that's your dish. That's the Nahat Ruach. That's what you are giving to Hashem. Tremendous enjoyment of Hashem. He knows you're not going to be on the level of a tzaddik. You have a different kind of neshama. You have a different kind of mission. You will not necessarily be a big, big tzaddik. But on your level, you have a very important job, similar to a tzaddik, just a little bit different. That's all. So this is called Itaruta deletata, bringing about Itaruta dele'ela in the Kabbalah. Itaruta deletata means an awakening down here below that causes, in its wake, an awakening in the upper world. In other words, when we press buttons down here, we're actually affecting something in the upper world. We don't see it, but that's exactly what happens. Because defeating the sitra hara is for real. Every time we refuse, we have defeated the sitra hara. And he says that don't think this is only about bad thoughts, or being tempted to do the wrong thing. Even if you hold yourself back from speaking something which is juicy, like politics, he says, yeah, there's a lot of people love to talk politics. It's juicy. But a lot of the politics has lashon hara, slanderous, negative talk, and all kinds of things that are not proper, and it's a waste of time. Right? And he's part of this conversation, and he could say something, and he would love to say something, because he enjoys it. And he held himself back. Do you know that for holding himself back from even something like that, the reward is immense. He has just defeated the sitra hara on a certain level down here below. Holding himself back. We don't see that, but that's exactly what happens. So that's why he's saying people who have these challenges should not be sad at all. They should be happy, if anything, because they have this opportunity to serve Hashem in this way, and it could be that they're going to be serving Hashem like this for the rest of their life. He wants to say that this is the remez insinuated in the pasuk that Yitzchak tells Esav, "Aseli matamim, make me some very delicious dish, food that I like." Right? He tells Esav, "Go prepare me something. You know what I like, right before I bless you." So over there, he says the word matamim is in the plural, belashon rabim. So the Zohar explains that these words, Vaseli matamim, the Shekhinah is telling us, telling the children of Klal Yisrael, make me matamim. Hashem says, make me dishes in the plural sense. Dishes? Not a dish? Yeah. I want the dish of the tzaddik and I want the dish of the Benoni. I want this type of service And I want this type of service too. Where this man or woman struggles with whatever challenge they may have, but is able to control themselves. So he says, this is the meaning of Kol Po'al Hashem Lema'anehu. V'gam Rasha Le'yom Ra'a. In the end, everything that Hashem has made, everything that Hashem has created is Lema'anehu, it's for His sake. So what does the Pasuk go on and saying? V'gam Rasha Le'yom Ra'a. And even a Rasha, created for a Yom Ra'a, for a bad day, for a wicked day. What does that mean? In other words, even the Rasha is created. Hashem made him also for the purpose of transforming that which is bad to good, that which is dark to light. How? When he is able to subdue the Sitra Achara. And as a result of that, strengthen or elevate the kavod, the glory of Hashem in the upper worlds. So what do we see from all of this? That even the Rasha, in his way, in the way he conducts himself, even though it's wrong, if he does that which is not right, but if he somehow finds the strength to control himself and to refuse to do the wrong things, even if he's struggling with all those temptations all the time, even that is a mission, even that is an accomplishment, and a very big accomplishment, because it subdues the Sitra Achara. I told you once that when somebody does teshuvah, and he was a big Rasha, but even if he was not a big Rasha, don't think he has it easy when he does teshuvah, because the Sitra Achara, the Yetzer Hara, will pursue him. I just lost a good customer, they say, a big fish. The reason why I say big fish is because sometimes these customers of the Sitra Achara were misleading a lot of people in this world. Because of their actions, perhaps they were causing a lot of people to fall and to do something which is wrong. So when that person gives it up and says, I don't want this anymore, then the business is lost for the Yetzer Hara, for the Sitra Achara. So it is quite normal to see a Baal Teshuvah in the initial stages struggling a lot to hold on to his newfound path, because the Sitra Achara wants him back. So they put up a big fight. They don't let go so easily. So you can imagine the level that they have reached by doing battle. It's not easy. Do you know what it is for someone who's completely secular, who's used to secular lifestyle, who has everything he wants and can dream of, to just give it up and let go of it? And say to himself, this is nonsense. I want holiness. First of all, why should he do that? Well, he has a neshama. Finally, that soul in him, awakened. But it's an incredible war, and if he wins, tremendous accomplishment. Towards the end of the chapter, he says, when we talk about refusing that which is forbidden, it's not just that which is forbidden. You can have a situation where an individual can do something that is very positive by refusing something which is permissible to do, but refusing to do it in an improper way. An example of that is eating. How do you eat in an improper way? You eat without any kavanah, without the proper intent. What's the proper intent? Hashem, I want to eat so that I have the strength to serve you. That's eating with the right kavanah. Most people don't have that. They eat because they want to eat, they're hungry. They want to satiate themselves. So when an individual refuses to eat in the regular way, but insists on doing it for the proper way, he's also doing something right, even though all he's doing right now is eating. Eating, it's not a mitzvah, but he's eating in the proper way. So he's refusing to just eat in the normal way. But his example of what it means to not eat in the normal way, but to do it right, is very interesting. He says, instead of just eating when he usually eats, let's say at 10 o'clock in the morning, he pushes it off for 2 hours. And he decides, I'm going to learn Torah. I'm not going to eat now when I'm hungry, when I usually eat. He says, that's very, very special. Because what is he doing? He's controlling himself. He's saying, I'm not just going to eat because I need to eat now. And he brings the Gemara. He says, the regular hour for people to eat in the morning is B'sha'ar Revi'it. The fourth hour, if sunrise is 6 o'clock, is about 10 o'clock, more or less. Even though most of us eat breakfast before then. But more or less, most people eat at that hour. Tzadikim, the meal of the tzadikim, the meal of Talmidei Chachamim, of scholars, is in the 6th hour, 2 hours later. What are they doing for the next 2 hours? Even though they're hungry, they could have eaten. They're already fasting for a number of hours. They're first learning Torah, besides prayer. They're pushing off their food. That's the meal of the Talmid Chacham. So he says, yes, you can see in all kinds of areas of life where people can do things for the right reason or for the wrong reasons. So he gives us these examples, the example of a meal, of pushing off the meal to a little bit of a later hour, just in order to be able to learn a little bit more Torah. Just a little bit more Torah in order to be able to push off this act of eating. Very interesting, very impressive. It's not something that everybody can do. But that is also considered an act of courage, I guess you can call it, an act of strength, where he pushes off the food for a later hour in order to first learn Torah. Even though they're going to be learning the rest of the day too. But they're able to control themselves just a little bit more. He says all of this, even though it's minor, even though it's me'at mize'er, that he's controlling himself, even though it's just a little bit that he's doing to subdue the sitra achara, it still matters. Even though it's little, me'at mize'er, that he's just doing, momentarily controlling himself, pushing off the food, it's still significant. Because the kavod of Hashem is exalted in this world and in the upper worlds. Now he says, and it's not just that, now he has a very powerful point that most people are unaware of. You just realized how great this accomplishment is when you subdue the Yetzer Hara, when you subdue Sitra Achara, that you elevate the Kavod of Hashem in the world. But there's something else that's very important to know. And again, because of that, don't be sad. Do you realize that as a result of refusing, resisting that which is wrong, that which is tempting, whether it's a thought or a desire, and as a result of not giving in, you subdue the Sitra Achara? You know what else happens? A tremendous amount of Kedusha comes down on you. A tremendous amount of holiness comes down on you from above. And what does this holiness do? It helps you. It helps you in Avodat Hashem. The service of Hashem may not be so easy for a lot of people. And here you're going to get divine assistance. You've just merited an extra hand, if you can call it that, from above. Holiness will come down. The person will become holy. They give him a certain amount of holiness, which is really a siyua, a help that gives him more strength and perhaps more clarity to do the service of Hashem. And he says, this is what the rabbis meant. Adam mekadesh et atzmo me'at milemata, mekadshim oto harbe milemala. If we just do a little bit down here on our own, we sanctify ourselves just a little bit on our own here, they will sanctify us a lot from above. This is on top of the mitzvah that says, Bitkadishtem, and you should be holy. We're fulfilling a mitzvah, Bitkadishtem, to be holy, to do that which is holy. How do you fulfill that mitzvah, Bitkadishtem? By sanctifying yourself with that which is permissible, not only by holding yourself back from doing that which is wrong, but even with that which is permissible. You say, I don't want it for the wrong reason. I don't want to just eat, I want to eat for the real reason. So one sanctifies himself even with that which is permissible. He doesn't exaggerate. He just eats to be content, just to be satisfied. He doesn't overdo it. So there's a way to become holy even with that which is permissible. So he's observing a mitzvah. This is an actual mitzvah, to be holy. So on top of this, he gains the advantage, he gains the benefit receiving an extra dose of Kedusha, more than what he has, which is what the Pasuk says. The Pasuk says, V'yitkadishtem. If you take the first step in being holy, what does the Pasuk say at the end? V'yitem kedoshim. And you will be. You will be, meaning that Hashem will help you be. Not only are you doing it for the right reasons, to be holy, to fulfill the mitzvah, but in the end, you will receive this extra benefit from Shamayim that will be a tremendous help to you during your entire life, to help you in the service of Hashem. He ends the perek by telling us, reminding us that all of this is true, even if this individual is not completely nivdal me'asitra hara. He has not completely disassociated himself from the impure forces. He has these thoughts come to him all the time. He has the temptations and he has to deal with them. He's not nivdal mehem. So what? He's able to refuse. He's able to deal with them properly. He's therefore conquering the sitra achara. So he may not be called holy yet. He may not yet be a holy individual. But every time he refuses, he's accomplishing a tremendous accomplishment. It's a big mitzvah. And for himself, it's a tremendous benefit. So that is the meaning. He says, V'yitem kedoshim, that in the end you will be a holy nation. In the end, when Hashem sees that an individual is trying his best to be holy, V'yitem kedoshim means that he will receive that assistance from Shamayim, that he will, little by little, separate from the sitra achara, become holier. And this is something that we should all aspire to. This is something that everyone needs to aspire to. But we sometimes think that it's beyond us, it's too difficult, and we become sad. There's no reason to be sad. This is what it takes. This is what Hashem wants to see. This may be the mission of many people, of dealing with the Yetzer on a regular basis, conquering them, and if they do, Hashem will help them. And Hashem will help them to the point of where they will really be holy, so holy that they will no longer desire these things to begin with. That is the essence of somebody who's holy, kadosh. Not only that he's separated from it, not only did he conquer it, he doesn't have any more desire for it. So this is something which is, of course, a very, very high level, but it's within reach, because the Torah promises you take the first step of wanting to be, which involves refusal of that which is wrong. This will bring upon you tremendous amount of holiness that will help you all along. In what way? To the Yitem Kedoshim, to eventually be holy, to not want to do these things. So this siyua melemala, this help that we receive from Hashem, is something that Balei Teshuvah will receive. They have demonstrated that they want to. They have to have divine assistance. And the proof is out there of how many people have left behind a secular lifestyle to be holy people. Hashem has come and helped them.